You don't feel broken. You feel tired in a way you don't know how to explain. Not dramatic tiredness, not burnout. Something quieter, something deeper. You keep functioning, but the effort it takes no longer matches what life is asking of you. This kind of tiredness does not come from doing too much in one season. It comes from being strong for too long without relief. From holding yourself together day after day without letting anything truly rest. You may not talk about it. You may not even fully notice it. But it shows up in the background of everything you do. You wake up and already feel slightly behind. You move through responsibilities with discipline, not energy. You answer people calmly while something inside you feels compressed. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. From the inside, there is a constant sense of weight, as if you have been standing without sitting down for years. Many people live this way and assume it is normal. They tell themselves, this is what adulthood looks like. This is what maturity requires. This is what faith demands. So they do not question it. They adapt to it. They build their identity around being steady, capable, and unaffected. Over time, being strong stops being a virtue and becomes a condition. You no longer ask whether you need rest. You assume you are supposed to endure. You become the one others rely on, the one who does not fall apart, the one who keeps things moving. And because you do not complain, people rarely notice how much you are carrying. What often goes unseen is that strength without release turns into tension. Real strength has rhythm. It tightens when needed and then loosens. Tension only tightens. It accumulates quietly in the body and the nervous system. It settles into your breathing, your posture, your reactions. This is why your exhaustion may feel physical even when nothing obvious is wrong. You may still pray, you may still serve, you may still show up faithfully. But something in you feels dry, not because faith is gone, but because there is no space to receive. Joy feels distant, not absent. Peace feels conditional. These are not spiritual failures. They are signs of prolonged self-control without rest. There is nothing holy about pretending you are not human. Feeling heavy does not mean you are weak. Feeling worn does not mean you lack gratitude. It means you have been carrying life without pause. Even Christ withdrew. He stepped away from crowds. He rested. Not because he was insufficient, but because he accepted human limits fully. Somewhere along the way, many people internalize a quiet fear. If I stop being strong, things will fall apart. If I soften, I will become a burden. If I admit I am tired, I will lose my value. This fear keeps people armored long after the circumstances that formed it are gone. You may no longer be under threat, but your body does not know that yet. So it stays alert, braced, prepared, always holding. This is why rest feels unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. It feels like letting go of something that once kept you safe. There is a humility that begins with a simple truth. I cannot be strong in every moment. This is not collapse, it is honesty. And honesty is where healing begins. God does not ask you to perform strength endlessly. He does not measure you by how well you endure without pause. He sees the whole of you, not just the functional parts. Rest is not something you earn after proving yourself. It is a condition for remaining whole. When you never allow yourself to be weak, you are not protecting others. You are slowly disconnecting from yourself. Strength that is never shared becomes isolation, and isolation, even when it looks competent, is a form of loneliness. You were not created to carry life alone. There is a quiet courage in letting yourself lean, not dramatically and not loudly, but honestly. If you have been strong for a long time, this will feel unfamiliar. That discomfort does not mean it is wrong. It means you are stepping out of armor that once helped you survive. You do not have to be strong all the time. Strength will return when it is needed. For now, you are allowed to rest without explaining yourself. There is a difference between choosing strength and being trapped inside it. Many people do not notice when that line is crossed. It happens gradually. You adapt, you adjust, you tell yourself you are fine, and because you can still function, you assume nothing needs attention. But inside, something subtle begins to shift. You stop checking in with yourself. You stop asking what you need. You become skilled at overriding discomfort, at postponing rest, at telling yourself later. Over time, later never comes. And what began as resilience slowly becomes disconnection. This is why some people feel strangely distant from their own inner life. They are not numb by nature. They are exhausted by habit. They have learned to stay regulated by tightening rather than by trusting. This kind of control keeps life moving, but it quietly drains meaning from it. Many people confuse this state with discipline or virtue. They believe that holding themselves together at all times is a sign of maturity. They believe that not needing anything from others is strength. But this belief comes at a cost. When you never allow yourself to need, you also block yourself from receiving. Receiving is not weakness. It is relationship. And without relationship, even faith becomes heavy. God does not meet you only in your competence. He meets you in your truth. If your truth is that you are tired, that is not something to hide from Him. It is something to bring into His presence, not with drama, not with collapse, simply with honesty. Many people are afraid that if they stop holding themselves together, they will fall apart completely. This fear is understandable, especially if strength once protected you from chaos, neglect, or loss. But what protected you once can suffocate you later if it is never set down. You may notice that stillness feels uncomfortable. Silence makes you restless. Doing nothing feels unsafe. These are not character flaws. They are signs that your nervous system has learned to survive through constant readiness. It does not yet trust that rest is allowed. This is why rest often feels unproductive, even wrong. You may feel guilt when you slow down. You may feel pressure to justify it. You may feel the urge to use rest to become more efficient later. But rest, that is only a tool, is not rest. It is another form of control. True rest has no agenda. It is not a strategy. It is a return to presence. The soul does not heal under pressure. It heals under safety. And safety is not created by effort. It is created by permission. Permission to be unfinished. Permission to be quiet. Permission to not have an answer ready. Many people pray from a place of tension. They bring God their problems, their responsibilities, their concerns, but they do not bring Him their weariness. They assume they must present themselves composed. But God does not ask you to manage yourself before coming to Him. There is a kind of prayer that is simply resting in God's attention. Not speaking much, not explaining, allowing yourself to be seen without performance. This kind of prayer feels unfamiliar to those who are used to being strong. It feels exposed. But it is also deeply grounding. When strength is shared, it becomes lighter. When it is hidden, it becomes heavy. You were never meant to carry everything alone, even if you are capable of doing so. Capability is not the same as calling. Some people fear that if they allow themselves to soften, they will lose their edge, their effectiveness, their usefulness. But the opposite is often true. Softness, when it comes from safety rather than collapse, restores clarity. It reconnects you to your inner compass. You may not need to change anything external right now. You may not need to quit, withdraw, or make dramatic decisions. Often, the first shift is internal. It is allowing yourself to stop bracing for a moment, to notice your breath without controlling it, to sit without fixing anything. This is not laziness, it is regulation. It is your system learning that it does not have to be on guard at all times. God is not disappointed by your limits. He designed them. Limits are not obstacles to holiness. They are part of it. They remind you that you are not self-sustaining, that you are held, not holding everything yourself. If you have been strong for a long time, learning to rest will feel awkward. You may feel unproductive. You may feel exposed. You may even feel guilty. These feelings are not signs you are doing something wrong. They are signs you are doing something new. You are allowed to take up space without performing. You are allowed to pause without explaining. You are allowed to be held, not just useful. Strength does not disappear when you rest. It recalibrates. It becomes available again when it is needed. But it cannot renew itself if it is never released. You do not have to prove anything in this season. You do not have to earn the right to be gentle with yourself. You are already allowed. There is a moment, often overlooked, when strength quietly turns inward and becomes something else. It is not collapse, it is not failure. It is the moment when you realize that continuing the same way will cost you something you cannot afford to lose. Not reputation, not productivity, but presence. Presence is usually the first thing to thin out when someone has been strong for too long. You are there physically. You respond. You function. But inwardly, you begin to feel slightly removed from your own life. Conversations pass through you. Responsibilities stack up. Days move forward, but something essential feels muted. This is not because you have grown careless. It is because your energy has been allocated almost entirely to holding things together. When survival becomes the primary mode, there is little left for aliveness. Many people mistake this for aging, or for spiritual dryness, or for a loss of passion. But often it is simply the cost of never standing down, of never letting yourself be supported rather than supportive. You may notice that even when things are objectively calm, your body does not relax. Your shoulders remain tight, your jaw stays set, your breath remains shallow. This is not personality, it is adaptation. Your system learned that vigilance was safer than ease, and once vigilance becomes familiar, ease can feel threatening. This is why people sometimes resist rest, even when they know they need it. Rest asks you to trust that nothing bad will happen if you stop bracing. That trust does not come easily to someone who has learned to be the steady one. There is also grief here, though it is rarely named. Grief for the version of yourself that did not always have to be strong. Grief for the time when effort felt lighter. Grief for the moments when you could simply be without managing yourself. Grief does not always announce itself as sadness. Sometimes it shows up as irritability, or numbness, or quiet detachment. Sometimes it shows up as the sense that you are always slightly late to your own life. If this resonates, it is important to understand something clearly. Nothing has gone wrong with you. You have not lost your way. You have been faithful in endurance longer than was sustainable. Faithfulness does not mean erasing yourself. God never asked you to disappear into responsibility. He never asked you to trade your inner life for usefulness. The call was never to become invulnerable. It was to become grounded in truth. Truth includes limits. Limits are not signs of insufficiency. They are signals of design. Your body, your mind, your soul were not created for constant output. They were created for rhythm, for giving and receiving, for engagement and withdrawal. When that rhythm is broken, the soul does not rebel. It quietly dims. This is why so many strong people feel strangely distant from joy. Not because joy is gone, but because they have not been able to receive it without feeling irresponsible. They have learned to associate softness with danger and seriousness with safety. But safety that costs you presence is not safety. It is confinement. There is a turning point that comes when you allow yourself to ask a different question. Not, how do I keep going, but what is it costing me to continue like this? This question is not selfish. It is clarifying. Often the cost is not immediate. It accumulates slowly. Less patience, less curiosity, less warmth, less capacity to be moved. You still care, but it takes effort to access that care. This is the quiet erosion that happens when strength is never shared. You may believe that no one else can carry what you carry, that if you loosen your grip, things will unravel. This belief often forms in seasons when it was actually true, when you had to step up because no one else would, when strength was not a choice but a necessity. But seasons change. The posture that saved you then may now be constraining you. There is wisdom in knowing when to loosen without collapsing, when to soften without abandoning responsibility. This is not an all-or-nothing shift. It is subtle. It begins internally. It begins with noticing when you are bracing unnecessarily, with allowing your breath to deepen without forcing it, with letting moments of quiet exist without filling them, with recognizing that not every pause is dangerous. God is not waiting for you to fail before He meets you. He meets you in the small permissions you give yourself to be human, in the moments when you stop managing yourself and allow yourself to be present. Presence is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It feels like being where you are without armor, like listening without preparing a response, like resting without justifying it. This kind of presence is where strength is restored, not depleted. It reconnects you to what matters. It reminds you that your worth was never tied to constant endurance. You do not need to abandon who you are. You need to allow who you are to breathe again. This is not the end of strength. It is its reorientation. There is a quieter strength that often emerges only after the older one has been laid down for a moment. Not abandoned, not rejected, simply rested. This strength does not announce itself. It does not prove anything. It is steady without being rigid and present without being strained. Many people think strength means staying unchanged. In truth, strength matures. What once looked like constant endurance slowly gives way to discernment. You begin to sense when effort is necessary and when it is simply habitual. You begin to notice the difference between responsibility and self-erasure. This is where the image of the quiet lion becomes clear. A lion does not pace endlessly to prove its power. It does not roar to remind others of its strength. It rests because it knows when strength is required and when it is not. Its stillness is not weakness. It is confidence rooted in being rather than doing. For someone who has been strong for a long time, this kind of stillness can feel unfamiliar. You may wonder how to live without constant strain. You may worry about losing momentum or direction. But usefulness was never what defined you. And respect that exists only under pressure was never real respect. There is a quiet dignity that returns when you begin to live from the inside out again. You start responding instead of reacting, choosing instead of pushing, showing up with clarity instead of tension. This does not make you less steady. It makes you more grounded. You may notice that your presence becomes quieter but deeper, that you listen more fully, that your words carry less urgency and more weight. This is not because you care less. It is because you are no longer spending all your energy on holding yourself together. Strength that comes from rest is different. It does not rush. It does not harden under pressure. It adapts without losing itself. It knows its limits and honors them without apology. Faith also deepens here, not as effort, but as trust. Trust that God is not dependent on your constant vigilance. Trust that the world does not collapse when you step back internally. Trust that being held is not a failure of responsibility, but a return to order. Many people believe they must stay strong to keep God close. In reality, God is often closest when you stop striving. Not when you collapse, but when you allow yourself to be honest. Honest about fatigue, honest about limits, honest about the need to be sustained rather than admired. This honesty changes how you pray. Prayer becomes less about asking for strength and more about allowing yourself to rest in God's presence. Less about words and more about attention. Less about fixing and more about being seen. There is no urgency here, no demand to transform quickly. The shift is gentle, gradual. It unfolds as you give yourself permission to live without armor in small ways. A pause that is not filled, a boundary that is not explained, a moment of rest that is not justified. These are not signs of withdrawal from life. They are signs of re-entry. You begin to live from a place that is quieter but more solid. Your strength becomes something you can access when needed, not something that consumes you. You become less reactive and more intentional, less braced and more present. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means you become less fractured by it. You meet difficulty without losing yourself. You carry responsibility without disappearing into it. You do not become softer in a fragile way. You become softer in a resilient way. The kind of softness that absorbs impact instead of shattering. The kind that allows you to remain yourself even under pressure. This is what it means to no longer be strong all the time. Not because you are giving up, but because you have learned when strength is truly required and when rest is the wiser response. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are maturing into a quieter form of strength that does not need to be proven. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to breathe. You are allowed to be human without apology. And when strength is needed again, it will be there. Not brittle, not forced, but steady and grounded. Walk in the light, even on the days it feels distant.